And then they told me I was bupkis. Just a regular bunky bumpkin under feet plots, what like unto the rest of them, the mostly sorry lot. After all I done there did. After all I done did up for thems, for all of thems, for the whole betootin' plotster scene, for the whole betootin' neologic narrow wouldn't have been a nuttin' withouten me. Me! 'Cause I's the ones what primed on up the canvas. I's the dids what could have coated up the prolly prop. Me! Now they're scrubbing me on off onto the leggerhosen like another regular gooby gone, the good-forgotten meat bags. After all I done there did. Well, it's high in tortoise time. I tell my right-like, splice-like on the story parts. Put it to this here wise, time encapsulator for to bury in the cornerstone of you folk public libertine, thence dust on off my merry radiations with the requisite aplomb-like of a tuber full of applesauce, knowing that those what mightn't come on by up after Oncarthropocene might unbecrush this here begone encapsulator for to find on out the who and the what and the elephant's tusk of the capital truth of the things. How's about they guts here? And who's what's got 'em up here? What who'da might up be responsible for all the such and such and such? So let me find on right precise-elated dictionary parts what might have just rightly paint for you as the real Capote Bierstadt, if you're schmelling what I stink. The Thule truth-like gumball ramp, the who's and the what's and the when's like how comeuppance, all of which the them and all their chinfinite a blizzard would just as soon as pastry toss into the geode pit entire, whilst disremoving me right from the architecture digested up photomart. So let me tell you what I dids, and let me make it clears, like blister. When I was what? Mere pipsquirt, rightly out of not like going on to no right institutionated educational restructurator, on account of the constrictions my parentals in our woe-beguiled den, what for the brainly wiping natures of such factuaries of obedience memorandum, I find myself in needling of a couple of crumbs of crustly bread, on account of I was anointed up the family breadly spreader for the bunch of pigeon toes what roosted upon our granite stoop on Tuesdays. I took my feats of bambling about, out specking for some breadly basket, some of such and sort, whence thence I spies on the side of the tomato one of them tarry little offy signs, what says what they, meaning someone, needs like someone, meaning maybe me, to do a little spready of a thingy around a place about this plots. I'd have spread a 4. Spread jam on toast. Spread the gooder wordy bits on right about the radio waves. I spread 'em wide and I spread 'em fart. So as I write about right figured like, what I coulda mighta be like one of the balonies for the hoagie bun, what they them might be looking for up the hiring wise. I took me up a slice like of the signy parts and brought it onwards pocket like unto the founder booth beneath the bridge beneath the plots, whence I did dial up the number 3673 IRAD 2 Delta Theta empty set 4 and 5 to Blifty 7, and right like that, they gave me up the jorb. In the blinking of a tweezer's toenail, I had been transmorphrified from a no-good, no-name, 2-bit pipsquirt pimple on the socialated kneecap heap up unto a shinied up like right employered, uprise, standing citizen-like of this right federale district plots. What a uniform and everything. A real nicely pick-me-up in aqua topac blue light green with pleated purple stash festoonerated right around the armpyhosen. What unto the shoulders parts, the federated sea lion, besides a flopsy little cap. And blessed of all, what framing up the nurples parts, a gleaming white octagulation proffered froth the staging ground, what whence good deeds might bring me on the rightly honorable janglies of repute. Peeping in the mirror like, benew like in my tinkly hose, I felt myself a goldly plated flowers pot, right ready for the sun. From my first picosecond on the job, I was butternatural. Didn't have to tell me what not to do, not twice. I done right intuitively. Up-dutied it, right from out the coffee grind. See, timely was, what right along the higher-ways and frontabouts, the houser parts, there done used to been a mess of greeny bits, what growed on up like carpet-like and stinked all up the plots. These greeny bits was quitely small and pointy-like and generally scratch-wise on the undercalves and such, but blurst of all, they uselessed up the groundy parts, what circumambulated plots and people's persons might have could have used on like. So the jorb of our deportment was to issue in removal of these greeny bits, and I was grade A meat. Just point unto a greeny patch and flash action, I tossed my fistful pebblies out my official portment fanty pack, fartin' wide up across the Toto stretch of greens, then thistle up and walk away. I was quite wise gooders like at spreading wise, I say so not myself. For without exemption, the greeny fields entire, what that I'd been assignated, would, in a couple of hourglass of my right spreaderation, turn all browned, musty-like, while stinking up the wetly paper, just as all supposed. Other dolts would have to back on back for seconds like, but not this Punkatunya. Nope. Still, I was not for good enough alone. Never was. I was aberrational thinkers like, on account of homely schooleration, what preparing me on up to be philosopher king. And I finds me up some problem like with Pebbly Spreader's system. What first, after about an hour or so, right scooping from the fronty pack, one's handy parts would tingly, and what with all the assignated greeny bits up stretchin' frothwards miles heptosplunk it might be take up gigadays or hectamonths to adequately toss by hand the pebblies cross the greeny stretch, which astride for being timely-wise meant work-begotten fingers parts was tinglied up for lots, even purplied up betimes, with rashly zoned reaction-wise to pebblies. Not no way to work. So I'm explaining all this up unto my designated work compadre over lunch loaf one such lunch, when suddens like it strucks me. What the pudding pot entire'd be a heck of a lot of butter like if what instead of hands, we used a tubule-wise to blow on out the pebblies, what unto a spray-like hoserator. My DWC was too deep lunching munch-wise for to really hears me out, but I thunks unto my spired self. If Gourd might sprecht a light unto existence like, might why not a muck like me go think on up a thing and done it? So's I done. I yanked me up a big old tubule out the back of Bunky Bozo's getting surgered around the corner, took a box of pebblies from out behind the paper clipperator, ricked it into the vacuumic compressulator I had jacked from side the defunculated burrito ricks, such what that the succulating action twixt the tubule might deliver up the pebblies spray-wise, cross a largulated swath of greeny bits, took it out for testing-wise, and toes to nose, it worked. Thusly like, my vacuumic, compressulated, pebbly spray Mahinerator borned, and with it borned the future. I took it to the big sight you, dear bossy boss, had pointed up a week ago, whilst the other mud skippers did toiled-wise all sweats like, tossing pebblies out their fanties like a bunch of clown-benukkled rubes. I was all like, blasting out my pebblies. From what? Here to King Comeuppance. Such what in a merely 3.0282 hours, I done pebblied up the toot for tootin' acreage, we had assignated 50 fingers tickling for a week. Never fore had the mighty flaming toenail of efficiency descended upon such muck as might as this. My co-work mates was nearly blind ecstatic rapturations. Der bossy boss was so done pleasured whence he peeped up the results, he bestowed upon my nurples parts a brand new jingly jangle bit right squatto. I teared a singlet tear. He lookered me all fat unto my peepers like, and says in that old rusty tugboat vox of his, "You's going places." Which I was. I was on the train to Shoboken to find myself, scratching tic-tac-toe games unto back the plaster seats, whence who should catch my thighs wise but the purtiest pair of pearly peepers I done ever did up and poopity peeped. My ventriculators was immediate, like all tied all up in bow ties. I said good day and took her out to feastly up those bright red, shelly, claw-wise guys with the squishy bits inside them. She was all impressed at all the jello. And the two of us was married up the very yesterday. But right about's the tiddly time, when I returned it from my Hunty Boone Splash Victorated crap on account of my most gloriousness of inventoration marriage-like, I found about the office of the Deportment of the Administration and Bedfellows. We had received up a newly cat about the kitten box. Blake, whom it seemed to be, had quick become the toast of the toodly tiddly. Now, as I reckon what I gathered up my thoughtly bits and reasonated up what, when I seized this stack of pancakes down, he didn't have nothing on me. Surely what this pipsquirt, nert job, baloney-tongued Jehoshaphat, who hadn't been done up onto the jorbly parts for more than a shrimp's cloaca, could have had in so few time done, ever could have did a had have found himself the totally tiddly without some foul-type play. Screamed to me a case of plastic nespotism, which in fact it was. Blake, I learned from mycorrhizal rumor mongers, was the right-aboutly feller who had happened up to sold der bossy boss his favorite goldly fish. You know, them floppy flopster guys with all the blurp and blurp blurp such. Blake did up and sold up one of thems unto der bossy boss for his amuserment. What it turned up out, the twos of them's got such a goodly palin' around the pet shop, thus der bossy boss didst tire him right squatto on the spark. Somehow, I was but the only choke what herds on up this narrativo seemed the leasted bitty marble toad about it. All the else was Blakey this and Blakey that. And it turned up he had so successfully ingratificated himself unto the office workplace culture like what within a merely 3 hours upon Blake's entrance to the mise en scene, some social clambering, catastropic orderly, looking for a price position beneath the new kid's sexly armpy pits, had up and spilled the slug nuts out the bean curd to told old Blakey Bake all about my vacuumic compressulated pepperly spray distribulation Mahinerator, what might evolutionize the whole procedure ratings of the offices of the Department of Amalgamative Distribulation, as we was called that month. This, despite severely gaggly orders like given to the form of flintly-eyed like looks across the brack room, what plainly spoke this project's top secretion, not to told some swoopy-haired like maggot-nostriled, beanstalk pinprick huck-turd from the pet shop you only met on Tuesday. But Blake, I suppose, had all these fancy letters coming up after his namely parts, what signalated a preschoolation marmot's incompetence with electrical engineering and such. So he starts throwing up the jargon parts, what doer hickey thisly wise, and monkey splunk at that. What all the other workin' Joes are so conmagrifated up the fancy word sauce, what they up and let him have at the Mahinerator. My Mahinerator. What to wrench her up and drill bits it to jazz it unto up and stuff. Whence I heards about the scuttlebutts, I right about barfeted a kidney. I was so petitered off. 'Cause you know what, Blake? I got me some letters like right coming up after out my namely parts-wise too. Whence they spells, eat a wet hog's filthy upper lip, you slime secretion noodle nose. Hands off my Mahinerator, else I sock you something sidewise. Which exact is what I says to him. The pico I laid peepers on the pipsquirt. Except in truly Greco-Tragedian, yours trustly was all readied up too late. Not only had old Blakey face done flubbered my design, he had up and showed it to der bossy boss what like it was improverment. Something what that my design what utilized a suckling of the pellets whilst the Blake's was up with pushing and pushing it turniped out, or so he brain-warped the deportment, was more efficiently and cost-effect what pellet distribulation. Hence der bossy boss was so gum-pleasured he bestowedeth unto him, qua Blake, qua interceptor loper serper, a whole right fisty full of jingly jangle bits right thence on his firstly donkey day. And lo, the salami of injustice did descend upon the land, as the rivers ran with magpies unto sky became of buttered bread. Weep, weep, O office parts, the duly right is unto you no more. And soon enough, that muck-beguzzling radish wart had all but up and mass-produced his pupid pebble pusher, such what it had dubbed itself the standardized of practicum. They even up and dated up the official Portman seal, whom now didst loaf upon a bed of posies with his trident sousaphone and pebble pusher, such what each and every cuneiform, including, yes, yours trustly, was all besmirched up with muckly marks of Blake bedrazzled on the overpits. O cruel walrus, what such as I might fall beneath your fat-like blubbered thumb. And to add a side of turd unto this bitter bucktooth sandwich, der bossy boss had right decreed in my importunant of abstinence, what we would form a new deportment, sub to the deportment, a clandestine-like cabal-wise of hawk-eyed, flint-faced, granite-mouthed efficiency-mongers, dedicated up unto the nobilizing tasks of optimalization, maximalization, and best logistic practice, headed up in tippity-top by none than yours trustly, an honor you might thunk, except it wasn't, 'cause Blake, with his stupid face, with that stupid hole where those stupid words come out, was declarated co-chair of the cabal, the two of us, up there butt cheek up to butt cheek on the serpent's tooth like toppity tip of organized pyramidal. And thensely, friends, my troibles up begat. So, flash on fro like a couple of cups of applesauce and all of the deportments using Blakey's pellet pusher and I am but a shade upon the wall of Blakey's brilliance, my originated pellet sucker, all but up forgotten by the ordinary Joes concerned. But we's got plenty enough o' work to be done, 'cause what with new Mahinerators, Jorb's flow ought to be totally reflorganized, exact the sorts of tasks what for my sub-deport created. The puzzle what, as such. Whence in olden times, what one might need up 60 hands to assignate a bigly jorb, with my Mahinerator, you might need but one or two. So first bedraggled question did concerned redistribulating handly power such what up to cover up more jorbly sites, and that was simple enough. Spreadsheets 101 fun. And yet persisteth one pescistent prickler left to shake from out our shanties. What with all the faster-rated workflow, we was soonly running low on all the longly, flatly stretches like of greeny bits what we accustomed pelleting. Yet greeny bits persisteth, far as eyeballs peep, over up the clop-behotten plots, just no longer on the flatly stretch. Now they climbered up slopes behind the trestles, tucked in dugouts such and such. And this is what? A problem. For a sloped right, upwise stretch of greeny bits doth proffer forth an engineer-wise huckle turd on account of pellet pusherators designated up for zero slope-wise ground. That is, it pushes out its pellets all horizontal fans-like with wheels all fixed up flatly and emotionally sensitive motor parts requiring sturdy sense of up and down and right and wrong. What tilted on its side, it goes kaput. So the bozos in the office parts start up and like and grumpling and up and such on account of seeming them be up onto banana peels all soonly like without any future-rated work, lest someone swiftly salivate adjudicment. So Blakey and yours trustly sallied forth, what to unbetangle this predictable predictrophe, and though my loins did seethe with purple dunction for to work astride old Blakey, it turned out as cats might meow it, the twos of us was complimentary angled up like skills-wise. Blakey was a sugar-frosted master at the nummy-nutty Broomley sticks for engineering parts and stuff. So he's what took adjusterating wheelie parts like axle-wise for curvatured terrain, refractured up the engine to a schwarmoscope to let it turn all sidewise, then supered up the suctionator wad to power ups. To be a pigeon's poopa for a pico, I'd say he done the diddly-dagwise did of it, him being right like doodly with the screw parts and the bolt knot. I, circle-wise, was on another cup of the tentacular, attempting to conceptualate the theoremical problematics of the taskly mucked-wise junket. See, it's easy to pellup up a flatly-wise rectangulated stretch of greeny bits, a simple boustrophodonly ox-turn pathway dones it, walking backs and frothwise, painting stripes on like of pellets. But as soon as there be one of them big, hard-like, tall-wise, knobbly guys, what with all the greenly plates up tots, what waves on like flopsy hands, soon as there be even one be middling up your rectangled, those crisp, pelegant, even like stripies just ain't gonna shuck it, Buckeye. You're curvling and swervling so gum much you're like to miss up patches-wise of greeny bits. And to lemonade petunias, if your greeny bits is on a slope, then it all goes up to biscuits. Suddens like the pellets-wise won't push up right out front of you as a big old greasy tongue no more. Now they starts up rolling down the hill, even falling down projectile-wise before they touch the hill on account of gravity. So as you have to point your hosey up the hills-wise slope, calculate compensulating both for rolling and for falling, becoming outright monkey house, once one doth start travexing up the upright topnological knuckle truckers we was getting into. And so my task, conceptual latisator I is, was to algorithm up these tricksy-wise paths, such what that our idiot brethren in the executioning deportmental could show up at an arbitrary topograph and know right quick what way to walk. So serve it to say, the puzzle was a stickly one, requiring me a time-compressulated, relativistic, waking, dreamly state of thought, in which I garnered 14 PhDs in quasi-theoremical applied computed whoosits. Then summoned up a smorgasbord of mathematical gadgets way far too far complexicated light for to explain unto a gaggle-wise of dolts like non-experts, but to be briefed. It involved the individual distribulation agent conceiving of himself what as a 5.2 three-dimensional semi-gelatinous heptagonadical prismalated boot, bouncing about the topograph as modeled by a twice-compressulated Poincare hyperbolic disculoid, whilst accounting perturbations of electrostatic nudge from bouncing 12-dimensional non-gelatinous cloctagonal pinball accomplices, calculating momentary stick lag of gelatinous elasticity, represented by the constant p, as they bounce against the variable elastic capacities of integer value Bollier-Lobachevskian pseudospheric psychological hang-ups, all of which gets mapped onto the topograph, obviously via simple Riemann sphere transliterates, which is to say this theoremical map bore fully disresemblance to the visual field as such, peeped what on by the distribulation agents, but acted instead what as a pinpoint model of the rate of the rate of the rate of the change of the slope of the vector of the path onto the topograph at an arbitrary instant spec of spacely time plus or minus wind chill factor Nurple lag. Exact the path to follow. My solution was ingenious-like, user-friendly enough, such it was promptly dubbed the standardized of practicum. Distribulation agents simply followed up the outports of their pentadimensionally gelatinous heptagonadically prismalated avatars and knowed exact the path to walk, what for a maximum efficiency of greeny bit removal. Their jorbs become so easulated, what soon enough they all clocked in, all goosed on up on meat tranquilizers, pathing their optolated paths, blindly tripping widgets, blasting public access out their shoulder-mounted comlinksys, appendixed from vestigial days whence all thems had to talk. So with Blakey's meliorated mechanicals and my profected pathgorithm, we was at the bump of the buffet line for efficiency concerted. Old Blakey. And yours trustly was upcalled unto der bossy boss's office parts to spark 'em the improvements-wise prognosticates. My brow doth sizzle froth with pride this very day, to recollection up the manner of der bossy boss's pleasure. So pleasured what he biddeth us, to accompany him, on a visit site to peep our work in action. We took him under Sector Blifty 2, a real petunias nugget of a quandary of a puzzulated quagmire, drenched in confoundation, speckled up with tough incline grades of 98%, no flat ground more than a picometer, 17 12-kilo tall-wise spikes, a handful of infinite pits, 6 curlicues, 5 Mobius strips, 1 Ouroboros, and 16.2 x-squared knobbly frickin' doodads spiking all up onto the plots, plus the much of it was fire. We sent on in our dumbliest of numbskulls, Nept, what to prove unto the pasta for the rigid fool-wise proofness of our system. And Nept did his daddies proud, pingo-ponging off the slides of spikes, flying squirreling across the rims of fire pits, churning trans-dimension-wise right inside out, right through the corkscrews, whilst perambulation right side wrong-wise round the Ouroboros, a perfect pathway path, whilst Blakey's pusherator kept right up a champ, crolitating doodads who's this, what this world were second skin, all of which to say, the demonstration cupcakes. Bossy Boss was drooling molten lead, he was so pleasured. But as he paired to mount upon our chestly parts a bright new pair of jangly jingles, emblazoned with the signal of a daffodil riding tortoise heaps, something weirdo happened. This ragamuffin donut hole, all dressed all up in burlap sacks and corkly sandals like, comes running towards our Nept, shouting something angry-like, thence crouchling to the greeny bits and grabbing up a handleyful, besavoring the sense of being poked all up his grossly legly hairly parts, like something kind of perv or something. Yelling something angry-wise I couldn't really hear above my thinkly bits concerning how a motile burlap entity intruenting on the topograph might muck unto my pathgorithm. And as it turned out, the path refracted strange. After several picos stuck in place, all herkwise jerkwise digitated glitchter, Nept careenered off the slidely of a rock face, thence begat all miracle to run like floating upside down 18.6 hexameters in the sky. He raineth down his pebblies inhaloed by the settling sun, a vision of efficiency. And then he fell down and his head burst open like a ripe tomato. But the blurb had already been baubled in my brain. The future, like, is airly born. But the screaming guy, all dressed up in burlap sacks, having peeped up dear Nep's head all blowed up, plowed kaplowy-like, starts keening octatonic thereminly-wise, for in addition to his witnessating all his prescient greenly bits, what getting browned up for desiccate, plus the suchwise splosion of dear Nep's most numbly skull, he also, I surmise, was screaming up his eyeball parts all melting in his face, thence trickling down his cheekbones like unto his scraggly beardly parts, whence all the meltly eyeball goop transmorphified to tiny grubsy maggots like, what burrowed to his chinly cleft to lay a clutch of eggs, then burst on froth in clouds of purple-orange wasps, which stung him up to deathness, thence flew up out away, whilst all his skin did burbled up and bubbled, thence melted to a stickly puddle, stinkly, brownly goo. All of which was what I spect was 'cause His screaming mouth had ate an errant pellet. And I suppose he found that sequence most unpleasant. I lookered to der bossy boss. He smiled, kilo wide, and we left it up at that, watching as the cloud of greenly, sludgely rain what formed atop the topograph didst flow away the piles of goopsy guts. On my way drive home that night, I thought, how fortuitous, what that we should be in presence, what for such a serendipt, never having peeped afore a pellet falled unto a thing 'twas not a greeny bit, never guesstimating the react. I combed about my mind parts like for words what with I'd owed my shiny wife about it with. But soon she peeped her peepers upon my peepsy, she erupted to a wave of blubbering, blubbered proud, what for the vistage of her hubby's chest-like parts all jingle-jangled up with brand-new jangly bits. A success. A man. What's going places. We hugged. We cried. We ate a whole lasagna. We neither said a word.